guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Back here out in the studio on the land. It is hot as balls during the day, but it is at least doable in the evening, and I sleep much better out here, and it's quieter. So I've decided to come back out to the land, and yes, I do have some air conditioning during the day, so I will survive. But I wanted to come out here because it's nice and peaceful, and I wanted to relax in the land. One of the things I wanted to talk about was drinking the Kool-Aid. What's a good way I can put this? This is a topic I've been thinking about now for quite a long while, which is it seems almost everything that I come across on the internet now, myself included, me being part of it, is people arguing and yelling, and almost no one can seem to get along. And even groups that traditionally would have gotten along in the past are finding ways to argue about things. And I wanted to do a video about this so that you're at least aware of maybe what's happening and that it might be having some effect on you. And this is maybe why you're either black-pilled, which I sometimes get, red-pilled, angry, frustrated, you hate the internet, everything's either bad news or makes you angry or is frustrating or whatever. And I think a lot of it's done on purpose, quite frankly. Recently, I was watching somebody that was pro-life, and they were arguing that if Trump is not, and I'm not going to talk a bunch about politics, but we do have to touch on it a little bit because politics is in everything right now. They were talking about how Trump was not pro-life enough for them, so they're not going to vote at all. And people started arguing back, okay, but like Kamala Harris is even less pro-life than Trump is. So if you don't vote for Trump, then maybe she'll get in and she might be worse for your cause. And the arguing went back and forth a little bit, and someone actually looked into this woman's history and come to find out she makes money off of a lot of causes over getting donations for supporting pro-life events. Meaning that if there wasn't the argument anymore of pro-baby deletion versus pro-life, she wouldn't be making any money. Then there's causes, or then there's other people, same thing when it comes to the Second Amendment, where there's people that make a lot of money that is donated to them to shut down the Second Amendment, and there's a lot of people that make a lot of money because money is donated to them to keep the Second Amendment as free as possible. And so both sides of the argument are making money for the argument itself, not solving the problem. When you look at homelessness in California, they've appropriated billions of dollars towards homelessness, and it's only gotten worse. And when you look into it, there's a lot of people that they have salaries of several hundreds of thousands of dollars every year to fix homelessness. But then if they fix it, they're out of a job and they don't make the several $100,000 a year as a salary. So they don't want to fix the problem. That's one group. Then that are actually making money off the strife. I'm kind of in that camp myself because I do make a very small income now. Unfortunately, I make a small income on YouTube from talking about strife and issues and the feminism and the men trying to find their own way and things like that. So I am a part of that, although I would like to actually see the strife end and I'll go do something else with my life. I think that's where I differ a little bit. And I've talked about many times how views on my channel are slipping, and I think that's fine because either other content creators are doing it or as men's issues are being like they're universal, like it's out in the public zeitgeist now. And so people are aware of what I've been talking about, and they said, I don't need to hear it again. That's good. That means we're winning. But then you've got people like Candace Owens that doesn't feel the same way about the men in tiny hats that Ben Shapiro does. And now they're going back and forth at it. And it goes, and same thing with lefties that are, some of them really think women are women and others think men can be women, and now they're in fighting. But the one thing that's universal with all of them is they get so deep into their beliefs that they're not willing to compromise or listen to argument or have a discussion about it. And I think in the long run, that's going to hurt us very, very much, because the silos, the thought silos for people, get very small. Like, for example, if you say, do you believe the Second Amendment? Somebody might say yes, somebody might say no. There's two camps of thought. What about in cities? What about to what level? What about defending yourself? What about having them open carry? What about having to have them concealed? And you start breaking them down, where all of a sudden you have 100 different thoughts on one topic. And the minute that you say, I'm only going to listen to my way or the highway, that's exactly what the people that are kind of running the show, whether it be for money, whether it be for power, whether it be for government, that's exactly what they want to do, to get us so fragmented in our belief system that we can't get along or even listen to other ideas and have some common ground anymore. And one of the things where I most recently noticed this, and I said, okay, this is definitely a conversation I want to have with you guys, is when I did a video. I didn't pull up the thumbnail, but I did a video last week or so where I was complaining about these women that whether they used to be models for Maxim magazine, Luna from Florida, or Bobert, going out there and being in bikinis, and then next thing you know, and I mean like literally modeling bikinis. And next thing you know, they're in government, but they're still bragging about their swimwear and how pretty they looked and how they're true conservative women. And I said, is this really where we want our politics? That day, I lost 80 subscribers. And again, it's not a big deal. I'm not actually complaining about that, but something I said to people that have been viewing me, because some of the comments were, dude, I've watched you since you had 30,000 subscribers, but I just can't listen to this anymore. And something I said in that video made them quit. And I said, geez, I didn't think I was being that argumentative. More recently, I did the Andrew Tate one. Some of them said, hey, man, I've been listening to you for a long time. This is the first time I've given you a thumbs down. I think that's great. I think that's awesome. That's how you have conversation. But there was about 400 people that unsubscribed, and they just said, unsubbed, I can't listen to you anymore. And I said, that really, it bothers me, not in the fact that I lost 400 subscribers out of almost 500,000. That really doesn't mean much. But it got me to thinking, like, just my opinion on Andrew Tate, and you disagree with that, is enough that now you never want to speak to me again or listen to my content or leave a comment, and we have a discussion about it. And that really surprised me, because I do listen to, and I'll get to my top, I'll get more on what I want to read here in a minute. I listen to Ben Shapiro. Half of what Ben says I hate. I listen to Matt Walsh. I listen to Steven Crowder. I listen to, I'm trying to think of Joe Rogan. I listen to Russell Brand. I listen to Jimmy Dore. So I don't listen to a lot of deep leftists, but I do listen to even leftist news to see what they're talking about. I don't agree with a lot of what they say, but at least I hear them, so either maybe I can learn something new, or I can learn what they're thinking and maybe completely fight back against it or push back against it, which is why a lot of times some of the articles I read are from women's sites, because we want to check in and see what women really think of men, and a lot of times it's not very positive. I mean, I think we can be pretty upfront about that. So where I say stop drinking the frickin' Kool-Aid is stop getting so encased or so set in stone your viewpoints that you refuse to have discussions or listen to ideas that are outside of your normal realm. Because when you do get like that, it is very cult-like. It is to the point where you can't hear opposing views or opposing thoughts or ideas and maybe grow as a person. Or maybe say, I've listened to what you think, I'm going to push back. Maybe here's a link to a video that I think you should watch, which some people actually sent to me via Twitter over on X, @Bachelor Joker. My DMs are always open, although it takes me a very long time to get through all of them. And some people pushed back and said, hey, look at this content. Are you aware of this? That's how we grow as men. That's how we change our minds. That's how we adapt to what's coming down the road. That's how we stay light on our feet, so that when society or laws or culture or divorce or dating, or anything else, our safety, military, maybe getting the draft going through. Being aware of everything that's out in the world is really important. And that's why I think it's good that we all listen to each other, even if we disagree. It's one of the things I like about my locals community. I get pushback on my stuff all the time over there. And we have a discussion. Sometimes I change my mind. Sometimes they do. Sometimes neither one of us change our mind. But at least we say, okay, I see what you're saying. I don't agree with it, but at least I see. And some of there's actually studies around this, and I want to talk about it because these are what's happening to you and me and everybody else, either on purpose, by powerful entities, by governments, by news media, by whoever that's trying to change your opinion about things. But this is also part of who we are as people. And sometimes we can get caught up in our own thought bubbles and not be open to other ideas. And Stoicism is cutting off the emotional reaction, the anger, the frustration, the vitriol, the fear. It's cutting that off and saying, how do I look at this from an angle where I can just take the information in, even if it really upsets me, and kind of wash that information and wash off the emotional stuff and keep the part of it that is really smart, that is really good knowledge to actually know. That's why a lot of times it's really hard to listen to news or other people that you really agree with, because you just get so fed up and you say, oh, they're lying or they're full of crap. But you have to wash the emotion away from that and say, okay, why are they saying this? Why are they manipulating us? Why are they trying to get us to feel a different way or look at the world in a different way? And if it's from a bad way, what are they trying to fool me into thinking? If that makes sense. So these are very quick reads, but I want you to be aware that this is how your brain kind of works on a lot of different ways. Some of these are things that they got rid of, which were good, and some of them are bad things that you can kind of get stuck in, if that makes any sense. So one of these, it's called neuroethics. And they say neuroethics refers to the research on ethics done within the field of neuroscience. Neuroethics can also refer to the ethical issues that may arise in the research and study of neuroscience. Neuroscience is the study of the nervous system and of the brain. The field of neuroethics is relatively new, and its findings are far from settled. It examines the brain in relationship to questions like, is there free will? And is the human moral sense innate, or in other words, hardwired in the brain? Research in neuroscience shows that the way the brain is wired has much to do with how and why people make moral decisions. In fact, neuroscience shows that a network of various regions of the brain is consistently involved in moral decision-making. So while ethics and morality were once exclusively within the province of philosophers and theologians, future research in neuroscience may contribute greatly to the resolution of key questions in these areas. It might be to the hardwiring of your brain as you're being raised as a young person. So if you always were, if your parents asked you tough questions, they debated with you, they made you see things from multiple angles, they made you think out and use reason, that you may have that pattern recognition already available in your brain, versus if you had parents that were very much a do it my way or the highway, and there wasn't the opportunity to look at things from different angles. As you age and become an adult, those are new ideas or new ways that your brain isn't familiar with thinking, and thus it's very much harder for people. I think this is happening. You're seeing this happen a lot in young people that are listening to their teachers, they're listening to government, they're listening to Hollywood actors, they're listening to musicians that tell them this is the way you must think and you must agree if you want to be part of the tribe, if you want to be accepted, if you want to be appreciated, if you want to be loved, where the other side is very much a leave me alone, I'll do what I want, I think what I want, and what I think of this is nonsense, or I disagree with you, and I don't want to be part of any groupthink. I don't want to be part of that. And if we can align on 60, 70, 80% of the way we think with people around us, that's enough that we can get along and we can cohabitate and we can have a healthy society, even if we're all not lockstep like an authoritarian or a totalitarian outlook of the world is. This is why you're seeing people that traditionally would be maybe left-leaning walking away from the current Democrat Party and looking more towards Republicans. But this is also why you're seeing Republicans, classical conservatives, leaving the Conservative Party because they say, I don't like the relaxed view on baby deletion. You know, I'm 100% pro-life, and so I'm not in with that. Or others that say, I don't think there should be any form of censorship at all. But some conservatives are saying, well, we can't talk about the men in the tiny hats in bad ways, or that's anti-Semitic. We can't talk about this group. We can't say that. And now you have a lot of people that are not firm right or firm left that are starting to collect in the middle and saying, I feel homeless. Society doesn't represent me. Politics don't represent me. Nothing represents me anymore. And I've even gotten pushback from some of you guys saying, why do I keep using the odd man out introduction for some of my Better Bachelor videos? Because I'm recording it also for my odd man out channel over on Rumble. And Rumble's treating me far better than YouTube ever has. So I'm aligning to a company that has more of my view of the world than YouTube, which is my way or the highway. And if you use certain words, we'll get rid of you. And Rumble doesn't have that. So again, it's moving into a different camp of thought behavior. I want to go down through a couple more of these just to see if these sound familiar, and then I'll wrap it all up for us. They say behavioral ethics is the study of why people make the ethical and unethical decisions that they do. Its teaching arises from research in fields such as behavioral psychology, cognitive science, and evolutionary biology. Behavioral ethics is different from traditional philosophy. Instead of focusing on how people ought to behave, behavioral ethics studies why people act as they do. Arguably, it is more useful to understand our own motivations than to understand the philosophy of Aristotle. I don't know if I can agree with that, but instead of studying Aristotle, or his words, if you could understand Aristotle and why he thought the way he did and how he thought and how he reasoned to get to his thought process, that's a lot more meaningful than just the man and what he said. Now you're looking at how did the man get to those decisions? How was he able to think these things through? And can I do this in my own life for myself? They say research in behavioral ethics finds that people are far from completely rational. Most ethical choices are made intuitively by feeling, not after careful analyzing a situation. Usually, people who make unethical decisions are unconsciously influenced by internal biases, like if the self-serving bias by outside pressures, like the pressure to conform, and by situational factors that they do not even notice. So behavioral ethics seeks to understand why people with the best intentions can make poor ethical choices. A case in point in like modern times, I'm going to use, for example, the Andrew Tate video that I just did. I look at his behavior as poor choice. If a 22, 24, 25, 26-year-old man decides to bed someone that's 15, for example, I look at that as a problem, even if the law may say it's technically true. I think that man is an adult. I think someone of that age is not, and they don't have enough to be able to make a good union. I think that's too easy where someone can be taken advantage of. Many of you disagreed. Many of you said, it's legal. And in the past, much older men were with younger women. I don't see a problem with it. It doesn't mean that I'm right or you're right. It just means how do we get to the point where we both have strong agreements, and is there any middle ground to have the conversation about that and still agree? Since we agree on 80% of the rest of the world, we can say, okay, this is something that we can't have a discussion on because we disagree. But we have these other commonalities that still allow us to function in a society today in a healthy way, that those two things are still close enough that even if we disagree on this one thing, overall we agree as a whole. It's not about the end result where we disagree on the problem. It's that, is there a thought process we can work through to get to a common result that makes the majority of us happen, or the majority of us happy? That's what we're not doing anymore. It's very much the my way or a highway mentality. And if we disagree, you're out, I cut you out of my life, I don't hear from you anymore. The left is very good at convincing young people that if their parents are still conservative, or they won't come to see you as a they, them, you need to cut them out of their life, never talk to your parents again. This is hardly a healthy thing for both the young person and the older person. And these are the things I think we need to understand if we want to be better men and better individuals in a collective whole in society. Moral emotions. They say emotions, that is to say feelings and intuitions, play a major role in most of the ethical decisions people make. Most people do not realize how much their emotions direct their moral choices, but experts think it is impossible to make any important moral judgments without emotions. Inner-directed negative emotions like guilt, embarrassment, and shame often motivate people to act ethically. Outer-directed negative emotions, on the other hand, aim to discipline or punish. For example, people often direct anger, disgust, or contempt at those who have acted unethically. This discourages others from behaving the same way. Now, if we break that down for a moment, look at what has been banned in our society and what is applauded in our society. We used to make people feel guilty for maybe sleeping around or just having too many partners. We used to embarrass them by calling them names, or if they were overweight, which I have not been shamed about my weight recently, and I should be because I'm getting overweight. And shaming often motivate people to act ethically. It's not just ethically, but that is part of it. If you make a woman feel guilty or a man feel guilty for sleeping around or being indiscriminate or lying or cheating or maybe stealing something, and you shame them, you embarrass them, you make them feel guilty, you can steer the direction of a society ethically. Case in point, Japan or Dubai is another area where you can leave your laptop on a counter, go in to use the bathroom, maybe talk to a friend, get caught on a phone call, and walk, 100 yards away from the store and say, oh gosh, I forgot my laptop. Go back and it's sitting there untouched where it was. But if you do that in the wrong part of the United States or Europe or Australia or whatever, you might have it literally turn your back on it and then turn back and someone snuck it away from you in 10 seconds while your eyes were averted. Those two cultures, it's illegal in both places, but one of which it's not respect of the law that keeps it safe. It's respect of society and your fellow man and your fellow person. And in the other, it's I don't care about anybody but myself. And so then you must overuse punitive and over-aggressive law to make sure that those things don't happen. That's using guilt, embarrassment, and shame. And the other outer directed, which is to aim to punish or discipline, is directed anger, disgust, or contempt at those who act unethically. Well, you see a lot of people today acting angry at criminals getting away with crimes, but it's not having any result. You see people getting very angry and frustrated about what young people are being taught in schools, but it's not changing. It's because the people that normally would be affected by this do not feel guilt, embarrassment, or shame because they're narcissistic and they're selfish and they're me, myself, and I, and that's all that matters. There's no cohesiveness in a society. That is a big, big problem. They say positive emotions like gratitude and admiration, which people may feel when they see each other acting with compassion or kindness, can prompt people to help others. Emotions evoked by suffering, such as sympathy and empathy, often lead people to act ethically toward others. Indeed, empathy is the central moral emotion that most commonly motivates pro-societal activity such as altruism, cooperation, and generosity. Yet, if you think about it, sympathy and empathy are the ones that are being used the least nowadays. People are not sympathetic of others' views or thoughts. They're not empathic about, hey, maybe this person feels like this because of this, or if someone did this to me, I would feel X. Therefore, I'm not going to do it to them because I don't want them to feel X. These are all getting washed out of society. And when that happens, this is when we start fighting and arguing and not getting along with anybody, and it puts us in individual silos to where we don't have any commonality or connectivity to other people. And when you lose that connectivity, that sense of belonging, that sense of community, that sense of camaraderie, in the good way, not a comrade, but the camaraderie, like on a baseball team, you're now an individual, which is easier to control because of you don't have others to support you in saying that's probably not a good idea. It's a way to isolate, ostracize, and then manipulate individuals because of things like this, which is conformity bias. They say conformity bias is the tendency people have to behave like those around them rather than using their own personal judgment. People seem to be more comfortable mimicking others, even regarding ethical matters. Now, if you take this from a young age, children will behave like they're taught by their parents, like they're taught by other school children, like they're taught by their teachers, because they want to be part of the community. So they will mimic the adults. They will mimic the other children. And that's why, for example, as a young person, if I saw a friend maybe steal something or grab something and take it, I would not do the same because I felt overwhelming guilt. I knew I would be in trouble. I knew it was wrong. And I could physically feel scared. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. No way. Because of the community that we have around us. But now fathers aren't involved in children's life. There's no male teachers or very few male teachers. And the ones that are very feminine in their viewpoints. When you get to university, it's the same way. Now we have TV, we have government, many that are ostracizing and shaming men, telling men they're the reason that the world is awful, and that if you don't support women and you don't believe everything they say, that you're a bad person. The mimicking portion of good people has been replaced by mimicking people that are selfish, narcissistic, damaged, egotistical, feminist. And so now that causes people to maybe not understand what's the right thing to do, or they think they're doing the right thing, but it's actually a negative in whole for society. They say, for example, studies show that people are more likely to act in a pro-social manner, such as contributing to charity or conserving water, if they see or hear others are doing it too. Knowing that those around us are making an ethical choice indicates it's the social norm and makes it easier for us to follow suit. Unfortunately, the flip side is also true. A psychologist, Dan Ariely, notes, cheating is contagious. When we see others succeeding by cheating, it makes us more likely to cheat as well. Indeed, the conformity bias can cause people to simply follow the herd rather than to use their own independent ethical judgment. Look at the way society is treating criminals right now in many, many states. New York, especially New York City, in California, Baltimore, Chicago. What they're doing is they're arresting the worst people in society. And they're not giving them any punitive justice. They're letting them go. And so even good people will see this and they'll leave. But people that are borderline that see this, they say, well, if they can do it, I'll do it too. And so there's a ramping up of the worst kind of acts and the worst kind of people in society. Ultimately, all the good people will have left. The bad people and the ones that are questionable will be the only ones left in the city, causing mayhem and causing destruction. Then the government, seeing this and seeing the people that are left there that are decent people, they will say, we want this to stop. The government can then come in and put in totalitarianism or authoritarianism at the behest of the citizens to fix the problems that the government allowed. Then, because there are no more morals and there's no more good conformity, there's only bad conformity, then the only people that are left have no morals, are all narcissistic and do as they please and do what they want. Then the government comes in, locks it all down, and they turn those people into docile sheep by smacking down the crime, but they've already got them under lock and key. Look at China and how they have facial recognition. Look at how the UK is coming out and they're letting the worst people go, but in the same breath turning around and arresting people for posting the Union Jack on a webpage or saying anything that's disparaging of immigrants. They're punishing, they're letting the bad ones free, the good ones they're locking down to create chaos until it breaks, and that gives them the right of control. Now, if in this case, if the immigration populace recognized this and would immigrate or would assimilate into society, and the people that were already there were accepting of that assimilation because they're making an effort, the two would probably get along, but that's not what the government wants. The government wants to make this strife and make everybody fired up and angry so that they have authority to come in and put cameras and put facial recognition and change everything to a digital dollar so they can take control of things. It is part of the plan. But you can't see this if you're so locked into your already prescribed thought process that you don't have an open mind enough to say, okay, yeah, I could see why the government's doing this, or I disagree. I don't think the government has anything to do with it. They're just trying to do the right thing. And unfortunately, people, are all the isms and phobes. Well, if you're so locked into your own thought process, there's no discussion between those two people to maybe try to find an actual truth or an agreed upon truth. They just don't do that anymore. And lastly, I'll talk about groupthink. This is something that the left loves to do, but conservatives also do it. I've seen many of them arguing that if you're not for Trump, for example, for this election, if you're not for Trump or you're willing to throw your vote away on anything but Trump, you're wasting your vote and therefore you're as bad as a communist because you're letting the communists get in power. That is groupthink on the right. The left, of course, does this as well when you don't agree with the LGHD TV and men can be women and women can be men and all the crazy things on the left. There's two groups of groupthink, but I still think a larger portion of everybody is somewhere in the middle where they're not into groupthink to the point where they won't listen to the other ideas, but it's quickly becoming that way. And this is one of the things that made me think about this because I might say something you disagree with. I know many of you say things in the comments I disagree with. I've never deleted a comment. It doesn't mean that I call you out, call you names and think you're stupid. Well, I don't agree with that. We don't have a good format here of having that conversation, which is why I started Locals, and I think Locals is so great because, on a video over there, I know people after they come on a bunch of videos. I get to know them a little bit more, and we can actually have some real good discussions. And I think there's been some minds changed over both mine and people that belong there over their views of the world. And I think that's a good thing. When groupthink is too strong, there's no changing of the mind because you'll be ostracized, you'll be chased out, you'll be shunned, you'll be hated. And nobody wins in that situation. But again, the powers that be, whether it's companies and governments and everybody else, wants this. They want you to conform, or if you don't, they will remove you. Why do the Republicans, and again, I know I have to keep using politics, but it works very well. Why do both Republicans and Democrats hate Trump? Because he's not part of the machine. And that he's causing people to not have groupthink, but that people are now looking outside saying, you know what, actually Republicans and Democrats are alike in many ways, and they're the uniparty, and all the news media lies to us, and all the other things that are the ways that they manipulate us. So understanding what's going on allows you to say, I think I'm being fooled. I think I'm purposely being gaslit so that I get angry, or that because of my skin and they won't hire white people at this job, only minorities. I need to be angry, upset at other black people, or I need to be upset at whatever. And in reality, you can't think that way. Because it's not a group, it's not a hive mind. And for example, the black people that may be getting hired by that corporation because of DEI, they might not even believe in it. They're just benefiting from it. Should you be mad at the people benefiting from it, or should you be mad at the people that are actually enacting that to give those people the advantage? It reminds me of an old cartoon where there's two poor people sitting across from the table at each other, and one of them has a cookie, and the other poor person has 2 cookies, and in between them is a man that's holding 100 cookies. And he points to the person that has 1 cookie, and he says, that person's got your twice as many cookies as you do, trying to get the poor people fighting as he sat there with the pile of cookies in front of himself. This is the way I see the world today. I see the world now very much so as the people in power, the people in government, the narcissistic ones that want to tell us how to live and who to hate, and it's actually the brown people's fault, or it's the immigrants' fault, or it's the ists and the phobes that are living in this country before you showed up. And there's many arguments to be had why the immigrants coming in are wrong. But are they people that have been told there's a better life waiting for them? Have they been lied to? There's NGOs and nonprofits that are down in Central America right now as we speak, telling these people, we want you up there. You belong up in the United States where opportunity abounds. Here's some passes. Here's a map how to get there. Is it the people's fault then for coming? Or is it, and yeah, a lot of them might be fighting age males. A lot of them might be criminals. But is that all of them? Shouldn't we have a vetting process? Shouldn't we have a closed border and make them go through this? Are they just poor people that have been lied to by the powers that be to try to tear down the country? Can it be a little bit of everything? That's why these surface levels, when you start digging down very deep, are very problematic. That maybe everybody involved, both the people that are being sent here and the people that are already here, are being hurt by this. But we don't know. The people at the top that have billions of dollars and think tanks and lawyers, and they have the ability to have many people working on many different scenarios, and they have AI now on how can we manipulate the system. And then we're sitting down here at the bottom saying, oh, I know exactly what's going on. It's this or it's this. Maybe we don't. Maybe we need to keep our mind open enough to realize there's some pretty smart people at the top, and we think what they want us to think. Again, it's an argument to be had, but that's the whole point, that when you get into groupthink and you get into conformity bias and you lose moral emotions and we don't do those things anymore, that's where we fall into a camp where we can be manipulated. The trick is to not fall in these camps, not drinking the Kool-Aid, and understand that more likely than not, everybody that has more money, more power, more strength, more ability is in some ways probably going to manipulate you for their own good. It's almost inevitable. But if you can step back from that and see it, then you can at least understand what's happening and try to break free from the thought process. They say groups may also reach decisions, including moral judgments, which are more extreme than any other member of the group originally supported. Unfortunately, if groupthink takes hold, group members may not even question ethically dubious decisions and actions. For example, some people say that Bush administration decision to invade Iraq because of non-existent weapons of mass destruction was due to groupthink. That is true. And there was a lot of people, myself included, who was a very young 20-something-year-old man. Boy, did I get suckered into that. I was also in the military during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, so I kind of got sucked into it, whether or not. But what about the same thing where now they say, hey, these young people, they need to be taught things when they're 5 and 6 years old. A boy can become a girl and a boy at the age of 8, at 12. They can take these medicines to keep them going through their life changes. And many of us on the outside are like, are you nuts? What are you doing? This is This is doing permanent, like, changes to somebody, and they're too young to make that decision. And the others say, how dare you? How dare you stop what this young person wants? Do both people believe truly that they are on the right side of things? Yes. How many of them have stepped back to try to view it from the other side and find some consent? None of them. It's just, and many of you, I'm sure, myself, I have a very firm side on this argument. But don't let that stop you from hearing what the other side is arguing. Because in some cases, it'll make you change your mind. In other cases, it'll make you very afraid and make you realize you have to fight back even harder because they are truly evil. That's what I think we need to remember. So when I say, don't drink from the Kool-Aid, stop drinking the Kool-Aid, it's not to say that you're not listening or you're not open-minded or that you're an ist or a phobe or anything else. It's understanding that at a certain point, you almost have to start thinking this is intentional. Why does TikTok let women do all these horrible things, but when a man posts about something, in some instances, about not wanting women that are only fools girls or not women that are like this, he's banned? It's because they want things to go a certain direction. You know, it's a Chinese app. Of course they want men hating women and black hating white and this poor person hating the other poor person. It's like kicking up an ant's nest or a pile of ants. Of course that's what they want. Instead of stopping for a moment and saying, okay, yes, we have a lot of differences, but how do we start to fix things? How do we start to find middle ground? Now, we may never find that middle ground. We're just a bunch of peons that sit on the internet doing what we're doing. So maybe we never will have a way to change the direction of everything as a whole. But we can do our small part, and more importantly, we can escape that. We can find some commonality with men that are mostly like us or even kind of like us and say, you know something, I think this is a group, somebody that I can rely upon. I have their support. We can have some discussions. And if we agree on a couple of things here and there, it doesn't ostracize us. It doesn't chase us away from finding some common good. I think that's the most important. So maybe share this, maybe let, I don't know, other people out there kind of know what's going on. And don't put yourself in such a small silo of thought that you're alone. That's what the people that want to control you and use you and manipulate you, that's what they want. Find a good group of like-minded men that when you say, hey, I don't agree with you on this, but for the most part, I kind of see where you're coming from. And if you ever have a problem or you need someone to talk to or you don't know what to do, reach out. We'll have a discussion. We'll come find some commonality. Maybe there'll be some shaming. Maybe there'll be some moral support. But all in all, those things are good to try to keep society heading in the right direction. Guys, I will leave it there. Thank you for listening to me. I know it's been a long one, but this is a big topic, and I think it's important. So make sure to share it. Talk to others. Don't be isolated. Don't be alone. Don't get so morally locked into something like a dog grabbing a bone that you can't let it go until it drags you underneath the steamroller. Keep an open mind. I think in the long run, it'll make you a healthier, happier guy that does better in life because you see everything from multiple sides, and that will give you a better advantage than anybody that's stuck seeing it from just one or two directions.